everyone, my name's Michelle Grant and I'm so happy to have you here listening to the Grateful podcast. On this podcast, we explore how each of us can lead change in the world, how we can play our part to build more sustainable and generative food systems, communities and lives. And normally you hear inspiring stories here from other human beings, but today is going to be a little bit different. It's an episode that's a bit lighter and a bit more playful and just for fun, but I hope that there are still some useful lessons and insights in it for you on your leadership journey nonetheless. So today's podcast inspiration actually comes from a playful puppy named Polly. So what on earth does this have to do with this podcast, you might be asking? Here's the deal. Over the last year, my husband and I volunteered as puppy raisers with the Swiss Guide Dog for the Blind Foundation. And a puppy raiser is basically somebody or a family who volunteers their home and their time and their energy to help socialise puppies who will go on to be guide dogs for the blind or visually impaired, or to work as assistant dogs for people with disabilities or people who are in wheelchairs. And we came to do this because, like many other people in the first lockdown, I guess, we became a little bit obsessed with having a pet. And when we started to look into adopting, the shelters were empty. And thankfully, we also had the good sense to realize that with both of us working full time, maybe a dog is not something that we can commit to long term right now. And just when we were about to let this story go, a friend told us about her experience as a puppy raiser with Guide Dogs for the Blind. And so we thought, let's go and check it out. They ask you to go and visit the foundation for a day to find out more about what they do and see if it really would be a fit for your lifestyle. And of course, the little balls of fluff immediately win you over. And so we signed up for a year-long commitment to raise one of the puppies. And about 6 months later, our inbox beeped with an email to say that we were going to be foster parents to a little puppy named Polly. So a little while after that, with some excitement and probably larger amounts of nervousness, if I'm honest about it, we went to pick up Polly. And of course, within about 5 minutes of picking her up, she managed to turn our lives completely upside down. And I very quickly realized that puppies are much cuter in photos than they are in real life, because in real life, they're not only looking cute, but they're also biting and pooping and peeing and barking and creating a mess while they're being adorable. So we had quite a baptism of fire, let's say, the first couple of weeks. But once the first few sleepless nights were over, I actually started to see just how much this cute little ball of fluff was going to teach me, not only about myself, but also about life and, surprisingly enough, about leadership as well. But of course, these lessons were not always immediately apparent to me in the moment. Usually I would be extremely frustrated by something that wasn't really going to plan with her training. But when I could step back from it and get some perspective, I could usually see a deeper learning in it for me. So in the first week that we had her, I actually just grabbed a notebook and started jotting down any time I learnt a lesson that I felt was important for my life or myself, or a leading change that came from this little dog. And what I found really interesting is that we picked up Polly thinking we would be the teachers, helping to socialise her for her big job ahead. But then the year together became one giant metaphor for lessons that I needed to learn. And I guess anyone else with a pet or children or in any sort of parental role is able to completely relate to this. Now, a couple of months ago, I had a bad back injury, and sadly it meant that little Polly had to go to another home to finish her socialization before she goes to college or a guide dog school, which happens in a few months' time. And she went to an amazing family who, she already knew and are taking just such great care of her. And we get beautiful photos and updates every day, which is lovely. But that also gave me a chance to, put together all of the lessons she'd taught me, all of the reflections that I had. And I thought, why not pull it together into a podcast to sort of honor and share all the lessons that she taught me, in the hope that, that love and learning trickles into your life as well. So dear little Polly, thank you for everything that you've taught me over the last year. Here is my list of life and leadership lessons from her. And in case you need some visual support for this listening experience, feel free to go to the landing page for this episode on my website. I'll pop that down below in the show notes, where you will also find an overkill of cute puppy photos to accompany this podcast, because who doesn't need puppy spam in their life? Just a little disclaimer before I dive in. This episode contains many references to pee and poop because I'm talking about a puppy. So if that bothers you at all, then probably it's a good time to hit stop right now. But for those of you who are brave, let's dive in to the 10 life and leadership lessons from a puppy named Polly. Lesson number 1. Learning is play, and play is learning. So when we first picked up Polly, one of the things that the trainer stressed was the importance of playing with her. We had to do this multiple times a day with lots of different objects and toys that had different sensory components to them. And I asked her why that was so important. And she said, because that's how puppies learn. It's enrichment for them. They learn through playing. Now, the first time I sat down on the floor to play with Polly, I was kind of confronted by the fact that as a grown human being, I had seemingly completely forgotten how to play. So crawling around on the floor, playing tug of war with a rope kind of felt silly and pointless at first. I didn't know, was I doing it right? How does one play anyway? But lucky for me, Polly was born to play. So she showed me how fun a cardboard box could be, or how stealing a sock and running around the house with it in your mouth while your humans chase you could be the most delightful thing you do in the whole day. And she showed me that when you do these things and you don't take stuff too seriously, you can actually learn some unexpected lessons along the way. But maybe even more importantly, have fun doing so. So through all these games, she actually learned to pick things up and bring them to us, to walk over different surfaces, to learn about what she could and couldn't do with her quickly growing puppy body. And so what all of this really taught me once I had learnt the fun of tug of war is that if I engage with my life and work in a more playful and curious way, I can actually open up a whole new world of possibility. So I'd like to end this first lesson from Polly with a reflection for us humans. How can we combine learning, work, and play to find a more sustainable and joyful way of doing things? What's one way that you could start doing that today? Lesson number 2, learn to face your fear. So when Polly encountered something new, loud, or frightening as a puppy, she didn't run away. She would sit down, tilt her little head to the side, and observe the new thing intensely. Even if I would wave a toy in front of her or try and call her away, she wouldn't be distracted, and the trainer actually said, better not to do that. Let her sit with a thing that she's afraid of. And she would. She would sit there and look at it, maybe even sniff it, poke it with her little paw, until she understood if it's really a threat or if it's actually nothing to be afraid of at all and it's just a story she'd created in her mind. And when she worked it out, she would then just continue on with her business of sniffing and chewing anything that was in her path. And as I watched her go through this, I realized how different that is to what us humans tend to do when we are afraid. And I'm not talking about when we're actually in danger here. I'm talking about the fears that we maybe carry around below the surface on a daily basis, but don't ever put into the light of day. In those situations, we tend to kind of taste the discomfort of this fear and distract ourselves from it however we can, whatever our favorite flavor of distraction might be, whether it's food or drink or Netflix or keeping busy or whatever it is. The problem with this is we kind of keep ourselves trapped in this anxiety and fear and discomfort for a longer time because we don't unpack what's actually going on. So to help ourselves move forward in these situations, I think we can take a lesson from Polly and let ourselves become curious, drop any judgment, and try and understand what it is that's really in front of us. Observe it, sniff it, turn it over, work out what's underneath it, and then when we have some space around it, decide what's the next small step, and maybe other than fear and anxiety, what would I want to guide me forward here? So a little reflection from Polly for us humans. Is there something you're afraid of right now that you're distracting yourself from? Create some space where you can ask yourself what's really going on, and maybe even let that fear speak out loud. And once it's done, you can ask yourself, what would I like to guide me forward here instead? Polly's lesson number 3, resolve to begin again. So any of you listening who have toilet trained a puppy, you will know that it's a rather interesting business. In the beginning, it seems like they won't stop peeing everywhere and on everything, and you wonder if that's going to be the rest of your life. But what the trainer told us is really important in these moments when they pee inside the apartment is for us humans to not make a big deal about it. Because if we judge and yell, then the puppy's simply going to learn that it's peeing in front of you that's the bad thing, not the peeing in the apartment. And so they'll still pee in the apartment, but they'll just go off and do it somewhere secret that you can't see. So instead of getting angry, what we have to do is take them out every hour when they're really little to increase the likelihood that when they need to go, they're already outside. And then when they go and do their business outside, we are to celebrate like there's no tomorrow. We had to throw a huge party, give her treats, squeal, "Brava, Polly, brava!" Everything that she loved. And my neighbors thought I had completely lost it in this time. But what was really important here is that this celebration gave her a positive reinforcement. So she realized, well, no one cares when I go in the apartment, but when I go outside, then it's party time. And so she really quickly learned that going outside is what is the best thing to do. And there's a lesson here for us too, because whenever we're trying to solidify a new habit or change a behavior, we tend to miss the step where we celebrate ourselves and we celebrate our achievements. So in the same way we would celebrate Polly when she peed outside, why not think about celebrating that new thing, that new habit that you're trying to build into your life next time it happens? It doesn't have to be with a huge party, but maybe it's just a quick slap on the back or a fist pump in the air and a well done you to give yourself that feeling of celebration. The other lesson that I got out of this is how, despite the applause and the learning to go outside, there were inevitably times when, for one reason or another, she would go again inside the apartment. Normally on my favorite rug, of course. And what was really interesting to watch is she never got disheartened by this. And it helped me to not get disheartened either. Of course, I'm completely anthropomorphizing her here, but it was as if her face was saying, "Oops, I peed in the apartment. Oh well, it happens. I'll try again next time." And that reminded me of the importance whenever we slip up, we don't change the behavior the way we wanted to, we don't stick with a new habit, that we're actually more gentle with ourselves. And instead of judging and saying, "I'll never do it," and giving up, we just have to simply resolve to begin again. So a reflection here from Polly for us humans is, what is something new that you're trying to practice in your life or work? Maybe it's trying to meditate every morning, or do some sport every day, or have a new way of talking with and collaborating with your colleagues. Whatever it is, what do you do when you drop the ball with that new thing, when you don't do it the way that you want to do it? And then in those moments, how can you support yourself to let it go, to drop any judgment, and simply resolve to begin again? Lesson number 4 from Polly. This too shall pass. So Polly was extremely cute, as a puppy, and she was also extremely cheeky and sometimes within moments of each other. So I was able to witness how the cuteness and the cheekiness, the joy, the frustration, it all passes, and normally within moments of each other. So I could realize I shouldn't get too attached or frustrated or annoyed by any of it, because before I know it, we're going to be into the next phase. And similarly, at first, I guess as any new parent would attest, I thought I would be surviving on a few hours of broken sleep for the rest of my life. But before I knew it, that phase was over and she was off sleeping in her own room like a total teenager dog. And it just helped me reflect again on a lesson that, we've been taught time and time again from all kinds of ancient wisdom traditions. Absolutely nothing in life is permanent. Yet we create a lot of suffering for ourselves by trying to cling to what we label as good. So with Polly, the cute and the well-behaved phases. And we try and push away what we label as bad. With Polly, that was the peeing in the apartment, the stealing and the chewing of things. But the reality is there will always be both in our lives, and both of them will always pass. And so if we can stop labeling things as good and bad and appreciate they all have a role in this spectrum of life, we might be able to hold everything a little bit more lightly, and instead of clinging to it or pushing something away, accept things as they are and experience them as they are, because they too shall pass. So here's a little reflection from Polly for us. We can ask ourselves, what suffering am I creating by clinging to something or pushing something away right now? How might accepting that all of it will pass create some freedom for me? Lesson number 5. Don't miss the joy in the small things because you're worrying about when the next poop will come. When we first got Polly, she had a tiny little digestive system and she needed to pee and poop a lot. And I found myself constantly on edge about when it was next going to happen and if I was going to get her outside in time. And because of that, I was missing a ton of cute moments and playful moments with her because I was always focusing on looking for the signs that she needed to go to the toilet. And I thought that was actually a really nice metaphor for life as well, because although it might sound a little bit crass, poop will always come at some point in our lives. But there's a lot of non-poopy moments in between. So we shouldn't miss out on life by waiting for those bad moments or those things that we don't want to happen. We should really embrace and enjoy each moment as it is. So out of this, Polly offers a reflection for us. And that's, what do you spend your time worrying about? And how is waiting for those things to happen impacting your ability to live right now? Polly's lesson number 6. Face things when they're little, or they will grow big and bite you. So Polly is a Labrador retriever, and for anybody who knows their dogs, that's a dog that loves to bite. But those cute little puppy nibbles are not so cute when all of a sudden the same dog is 30 kilograms and has your hand in its mouth. So the trainer was really clear with us. You have to teach her when she's a puppy that it's not okay to bite before she gets too big. And I thought it's interesting how rarely we do that as humans. We might notice the little bites and nibbles that tell us something's not okay, but we tend to wait until the issue becomes really, really big before we actually tackle it. Rather than finding the courage early on when we're only dealing with little puppy teeth, we tend to wait until the 30-kilogram dog is metaphorically biting us, and when we see that we have no other choice but to face it. So I think the lesson that Polly taught me here, and this especially relates to collaborating in a team, is that if we face issues head on when they're small, then we can stop it from becoming a massive problem. If we can find the courage to face the little bites, then we don't all of a sudden find ourselves with our arm in the mouth of a 30-kilogram dog. So here's Polly's reflection for us. What's nibbling on your hand at the moment that might need attention before it becomes a 30-kilogram dog? Lesson from Polly number 7. Don't always hold the leash so tight. The first days that I had Polly, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I had never had a puppy before. I was super anxious that this tiny little ball of fluff would run away and get hit by a car or something. And so I was holding onto her leash really tight and keeping her really, really close. And it turns out that this isn't really great for her because it was putting constant subtle pressure on her neck. And it meant that she couldn't sense like small movements or signals that I gave her. And likewise, I couldn't sense those from her. And so if I kept doing that, she was just going to learn that she needs to push and pull stronger to get her own way. After a few days of this, the trainer visited and watched us together and said, you know what, it's probably a good idea that you just leave a little bit more slack in the leash so that you can read each other better. And I realized that was pretty good life advice too. I know for myself, and I see so often with others, that we tend to hold onto everything so tightly. We try to control things in the direction that we want them to go and fear that if we don't keep that leash tight, then it's going to run off into the traffic. But if we can learn to leave some slack in the leash of everything that we're holding, we're actually better able to get signals back from what we're interacting with and also communicate better what our needs are so that we can find a way to go in the right direction together. So Polly's reflection for us humans: is there anything that you're holding on to a little too tightly at the moment that might benefit from a little slack in the leash? And what would letting go a little look like? Lesson number 8 from Polly: stop and smell the roses and the poop. Be willing to experience it all. So Polly lives her life nose first. Nothing escapes her sniffing. She stops to smell and sometimes try and eat the roses, but she also stops to smell the poop. Dog poop, fox poop, horse poop, all the poop, doesn't matter, she will smell it. And that's exactly my point. She taught me that we don't actually need to discriminate so clearly between the flowers and the poop when it comes to what we give our attention to. I think that's really a lesson for us because as humans, we tend to not want to sit with the difficult stuff, the uncomfortable emotions that we incorrectly label as bad. We might suppress them or find ways to distract ourselves from them rather than sitting with them and smelling them. We're always instead seeking out the roses, the positive emotions, or things that we think we should be experiencing all the time. But the reality is that life is both poop and roses, and both of them deserve our attention. All of the emotions are important. They're all signals and indicators and information that can help us find our way. We just need to be willing to sit with them when they're there so that they can pass through us and that we can learn what we need to from the experience. So Polly offers a reflection on this as well. What are the emotions you are avoiding sitting with? And what might experiencing them as they are, without any judgment or without fear that they'll stay forever, what might that bring for you? Lesson number 9 from Polly is slow down, you're moving too fast. So it might come as no surprise that Polly did not care for my multitude of daily Zoom calls during the working from home period. And she even learnt that if she snuck up behind me while I was on a call and poked me repeatedly with her nose, I couldn't ignore her. And if I did, well, then she could just start nibbling on my back until I absolutely had to do something with her. So it wasn't any wonder that when we went for walks between calls, she would absolutely take her sweet time, sniff all the things, explore everything with a blatant disregard for my Zoom timetable. And in the beginning, I kind of got frustrated when right when I would need to come back home for a call, she would find something infinitely fascinating to occupy herself with, making it really difficult for me to encourage her to come home. And I pretty quickly realized that, well, this isn't her problem. It's up to me to make more time and space for these walks so that we wouldn't have to hurry back home. And it was exactly these walks that I grew to love, these forced breaks from the computer, being out in nature no matter what the weather. She really helped me turn my initial frustration into a love and appreciation for slowing down, getting away from the hamster wheel we put ourselves on, and just reminding me that life is not enjoyed if you run from one call to the next or from one thing to the next, that we really need to take the time to smell and explore along the way. Or else, what's really the point of it all? And because of her, I was really able to carve out a routine where I spend more time outside in the beginning, the middle, and the end of the day. And it's really slowed me down and created some more space around everything, which is just such an incredible gift. And also the time when I have interesting reflections and insights that actually support the work I'm trying to do. So a simple reflection for you from Polly. Where could you sneak in some more time and space to explore the outdoors today? Or to simply slow down or explore something new? Lesson number 10 from Polly is bark when your needs aren't met. So Polly's only concerned with a few things in life: eating, sleeping, playing, and cuddling. And to be honest, she isn't too crash hot on the cuddling. She'd definitely swap it for more playing if she could. It's more that us humans needed her to be more cuddly. And these basic needs, eating, sleeping, playing, is what she focuses on above everything else. And if one of them for any reason is not being met, then she'll let us know in some pretty clear way. And if we don't pick up that signal, she'll bark. The thing is, us humans aren't actually that different in our core needs. Eating, sleeping, playing, cuddling. Yet we let almost all of those be overrun by less critical things that we nonetheless prioritize. And in my experience, those things are mostly emails and meetings. But Polly really helped me realize that we need to get better at recognizing what our needs actually are and asking for support when they're not being met. She helped me reflect on what the most basic, important things are in my day and to learn how to do those before I do anything else. And from that, actually, I'm able to do more interesting, deeper, and more focused work as a result. The barking, which drove me crazy, also helped me reflect on that's how it often is for us as humans too. We perhaps leave very subtle cues that we need support that aren't clear enough until eventually there's some sort of a blow up or equivalent to barking that we have to do to signal to people we need some support. So that also left me thinking, how can we get better at communicating our needs early on before we have to bark? So Polly offers a reflection for you as well. What actually are your basic needs in your daily life? And how could you make sure you prioritize them above everything else? What's the most effective way for you to signal when you need support to meet those needs? Now, I know I promised you 10 lessons from Polly, but she has a bonus 11 one from us, and it's a very simple one. If someone is stuffing treats in your face, they may be trying to control you. I think that says it all. Polly tells you to stay vigilant, to be wary of those stuffing treats in your face. So that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening along to all of Polly's wisdom. I hope it gave you some food for thought for your life and work as well. If you have a topic that you would love me to explore on this podcast, or perhaps a guest that you think would be a great fit, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can find me at podcast@thegrateful.com. I'm always super happy to hear your suggestions and to see how I can integrate them on the show. And if you're enjoying it, feel free to go ahead and subscribe or leave a review. I always love hearing your feedback. Thanks so much for listening.